Hello everybody, welcome to another video. My name is Chloe. I also go by Misk. I make videos here on YouTube fairly regularly. I also stream on Twitch and have an Instagram you can follow. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about asexuality and the Big Bang Theory. And I know I look a little bit scruffy and I'm in a bit of a rush to get this filmed. I don't have a lot of time alone in the house to film, and I really just want to get this done so that I can move on and stop thinking about the Big Bang Theory. So for context, I have made recently 2 videos about asexuality if you do want some more information on the topic before we dive into this, and I did mention the Big Bang Theory in those videos. And I've also written about the Big Bang Theory for the Mary Sue in relation to asexuality before, and I figured that I should actually just put it all into a video. I have a lot of feelings on this topic, so that's what this is. So let me start out by saying I do not like the Big Bang Theory. I think that for me, maybe my #1 deal breaker on a first date, just like first impressions, would be if my date arrived wearing a Bazinga shirt. Out. And there are a lot of reasons you could criticize the show. You know, it's the unfunny jokes for me. It's the racism for me.
Why would you think this is an appropriate gift?
You are black, right?
I can't sit on that elephant. My ass is on fire from eating all this curry.
It's the sexism for me. I'm just gonna read you the Netflix episode summaries for some of season 6. While Wallowitz wrestles with cabin fever, Sheldon provokes a chain reaction of jealousy by hiring an attractive assistant to sort his old papers. Wallowitz is distressed by the lukewarm reception he receives when he returns home from space, while Sheldon gets ultra competitive during game night. There are no women in that storyline. Raj and Stuart throw a Halloween bash, but it seems like the only one in the party mood is Penny, who gets turned on every time Leonard talks about science. Sheldon gets competitive while playing a word game with Stephen Hawking, and Penny is infuriated by Leonard's attempts to help her with her homework. It's like men in the show do things, and women in the show do things only to do with their relationships to the male characters in the show. Even more specifically, it is the pretending to be sweet, harmless, nerdy guys while actually being really crappy and like creepy towards women.
Oh my god!
Wait, where are you going? We were doing so well. She never even got to see my penis. There's the house. I found America's Top Models.
You can recognize people on Google Earth?
Of course not. I got a buddy of mine at NORAD to have a spy drone fly over.
It's the creators refusing to acknowledge that Sheldon is autistic so that they can continue to make almost every joke about his character centered around his autistic traits. For me, it's the pretending to be a show that celebrates nerdiness while actually being a show about how much nerds should hate themselves, especially for not living up to the stereotypical standards of masculinity.
What do you have for someone who's bitter and alone?
Literally everything.
And I definitely couldn't make a better video about this than has already been made by the Pop Culture Detective. And his videos unpack some of these ideas, especially the ones around gender, masculinity, and misogyny. So I'll link those down below, and I am begging you to watch them. They are so good. But my video is going to be about something that I don't really hear people talking about an awful lot when it comes to the Big Bang Theory, and that is, it's the ACEPHOBIA for me. So in this video, I'll be talking about why I think Sheldon Cooper is an asexual character and how the creators of the show just completely failed and insulted the asexual community with how they handled that in the show. So, why do I think that Sheldon is asexual? And before I get started, once again, if you are looking for some more detailed information about asexuality, then I have made 2 videos about it. But for the purposes of this video, a basic definition of asexuality is when a person does not experience sexual attraction to anyone of any gender. And the definition of demisexuality might also be useful, and that is when a person only begins to develop sexual attraction to somebody once they have already formed a close bond with that person. So for the most part, Sheldon is left out of the sort of frenzy of the group around sex and women until he meets his romantic interest for the rest of the show, Amy, in season 3. But there are some really revealing quotes out of season 6 that I think tell us a lot about Sheldon's attitudes when it comes to sex. So let's have a look at a few of those. In season 6, episode 20, Sheldon says this.
Hold on. I believe "screw it, I'm going in" is what I said to your mother last night. Don't worry, I didn't really say that. I find the concept of coitus ridiculous and off-putting.
And then there is a long scene in season 6, episode 23, which we're going to come back to a little bit later on, where Sheldon says this.
Amy, before I met you, I never had any interest in being intimate with anyone.
And now?
And now what?
Now, I could comb through the rest of this show looking for more evidence and more quotes, but firstly, I think that it would act like sandpaper upon my brain, leaving me smooth and aerodynamic in there. But I also just don't think that we really need much more evidence than these quotes provide for the purposes of this video. And I'm skeptical of the fact that anything that I find before season 6 would give any kind of indication that Sheldon is anything more than disinterested, neutral, or even repulsed when it comes to sex. So my headcanon and my conclusion is asexual Sheldon. And unfortunately, it is only a headcanon, and we're going to come back to the canon in a little while. But Sheldon's friends and Amy, his girlfriend, are constantly saying really mean things about his feelings about sex, about his sexuality and his sexual attitudes. Like in season 6, episode 2, Leonard says this.
Okay, I think I understand.
You do?
The guy who seems like an emotionless robot is you. But your relationship with Amy is causing you to transform into a red-blooded man with sexual desires.
So in that one sentence, which doesn't even have anything to do with the plot of the rest of the episode, Leonard manages to imply that asexuality is firstly a defect of some kind, an abnormality of some kind, as well as something that can be cured or that goes away with time, as well as something that detracts from a man's masculinity. Once again, I could comb through the show for more examples, but in truth, I don't want to. I was so opposed to watching the show for this video that I actually ended up opening the show on my brother's Netflix account and watching it with the sound off and the subtitles on, just to find the quotes that I knew I was looking for. Moving on, Amy, Sheldon's girlfriend, is also obviously from the outset interested in having a physical and sexual relationship with Sheldon.
You want to rub something on my chest?
Are you saying you want to spank me?
But I don't want to. But it looks like you left me no choice.
Oh my.
And that season 6 episode 23 scene is, I think, a really important one in looking at these two people's relationship. And let me add for context that this conversation is taking place 3 years into Amy and Sheldon already being in a relationship in the show.
I'll tell you what they think. They think our relationship is a joke.
Well, I don't think our relationship is a joke.
Sheldon, are we ever going to have an intimate relationship?
Oh my, that's an uncomfortable topic.
So, first, Amy asks Sheldon, will we ever be in an intimate relationship? Which is a super sad, super heartbreaking question to ask your asexual partner, especially after already having been in a committed romantic relationship for 3 years. And Sheldon's response is to say,
I know it doesn't seem like it to you, but for me, what we have is extremely intimate.
Then Sheldon makes his declaration that before he met Amy, he was never interested in having a sexual relationship with anyone else. And Amy's response is to say, and now?
Do you have any interest now?
Because she expects that Sheldon will have changed for her. The way that people tend to expect asexuals to be cured by meeting the right person. And Sheldon's response is to say, and now what? Because he's asexual.
I have not ruled it out.
Next in the scene, they go on to do some like sensual role play of the imagination using their D&D dice, which Sheldon enjoys. And actually that leads me into my next point, which is that Sheldon and Amy do end up being in a sexual relationship. After a long build-up throughout the show, they eventually kiss and eventually develop a more and more physical relationship, and eventually they do have sex in season 10. And I have quite a lot of feelings about this. So the first thing to note is that there is a difference between sensual attraction and sexual attraction. So that explains why Sheldon was okay with certain kinds of sensual touch, like hand-holding, kissing, cuddling, hugging, that sort of thing, although it was something that they had to slowly negotiate for over time. Also, that sexual attraction is not required to have sex, and plenty of asexual people do end up having sex with their romantic partners when they're together. Going back to our old faithful 2015 asexuality survey, 41% of asexuals when asked said that they would consider having sex if they were in a romantic relationship. So that decision is totally valid, and a person's decisions about sex do not change a person's identity. It is also possible that Sheldon is demi and that his sexual attraction for Amy developed after 3 years together. And if that were the case, that would also be completely valid. I can also empathize with Amy. I can see why she would have felt the emotional effects of their apparent sexual incompatibility. Especially given that Sheldon is a man and men are generally expected to be more sexual and more sexually desiring. So for Amy as a woman, I can see how she might have felt rejected and unwanted by Sheldon. However, I don't really think that it was the right move for the show to eventually write Sheldon and Amy into a sexual relationship in the end and change Sheldon to suit Amy's desires. It's also worth noting that The Big Bang Theory is a fictional universe. In the show, Sheldon's personality shields him from the effects of everybody's opinions and everybody's snide remarks about his sexuality, and Sheldon does not budge his own boundaries until he feels ready in the end. And Amy also does not ever violate his consent physically, as far as I know, in the show. But I think in real life, the chances of things working out that way are slim. I think that in real life, a person in Sheldon's position would start to feel very guilty about not performing their like romantic partner sex duties. And I think that the results of the Big Bang Theory treating asexuals the way they do, like an asexual person would need to change themselves in order to completely love their partner and in order to be completely loved by their partner, are really dangerous. I think that the real world implications of that and the attitude that it feeds into is really dangerous for people in relationships where they end up feeling coerced. I think it might be useful to think about the show if Amy and Sheldon were gender swapped. So boy meets girl, girl is not interested in entering into a sexual relationship with boy, but they are quirky, they're compatible, they like each other's company, they want to be together. In particular, girl doesn't really want to be with anyone other than this boy. Boy is careful not to cross any of girl's physical boundaries for 3 whole years. As a jaded asexual, I'm not even sure that that's realistically possible, although I know it is. It should be. However, boy is constantly nagging girl for sex, is constantly hinting about having sex with girl, and girl's friends are also really mean to her about how weird they think it is that she doesn't want to have sex with boy. Eventually, after years of boy trying to get girl to change her mind about sex, she eventually sleeps with him, and it happens on her terms, and it appears to be a healthy sexual relationship, but I still think that on paper it's kind of icky and coercive in nature. And I think that if it were not in this fictional scenario where everything works out and everybody's boundaries are respected, and if it was in a real world scenario, I think that something like this could be like really, really icky and coercive in reality. So at this point, I'd like to talk a bit about what I think the creators of Big Bang Theory should have done differently and how they could have actually done something good with this character, but didn't. So the creators of this show have actively denied 2 major features of Sheldon's personality that fans have interpreted as existing, and that is Sheldon as asexual and Sheldon as autistic. The creators of the show, as I said, have actively stated that Sheldon is not autistic. I'll put this link down below and you can pause and read this if you want to. But the part that I actually want to read out loud, because I think it's so wild, is this part here. There are good reasons why the Big Bang Theory writers do not want to label Sheldon as an Aspie. That's referring to Asperger's syndrome. Number 1 on the list is that if he's affected with a real disease, how can his friends mock him in the way they do? Brady also told Sepinwall that they weren't ready to accept the responsibility of getting all the details right if Sheldon were diagnosed as having Asperger's, instead of the writers having the freedom to make Sheldon as anal and nerdy as they like. They would be constrained to the nature of the ailment. I could throw up in my mouth reading that. Y'all wrote a character who exhibits autism traits to such a degree that over 70% of the audience, when asked if they think Sheldon is autistic, said yes, he probably is. And then you refuse to call him autistic because, by your own admission, you treat him like such crap in your show that if you were to call him autistic, you would really piss off and offend autistic people. But then you decide you'll just not call it autism, and you found the loophole, and you've escaped all accountability. And I'm sorry, but you can't just make a show where the entire point of one of the characters is centered around making comedy and mocking their neurodivergent traits, and then defend it by being like, oh, but is it really autism? Or is he just a horrible goose with no diagnosis? But to bring it back to the original topic, my lighting is getting bad. I need to quickly turn the light on. I don't actually know if that's better or worse. Now to get back to the original topic, talking about asexuality, I actually couldn't find any kind of quotes or anything from the show's creators about Sheldon's asexuality. To be honest, I don't think that it comes up that often, just in general. So it's kind of like they've neither confirmed nor denied that he's asexual. They've certainly never stated that Sheldon is canonically asexual. And it's never been stated in the show either. But overall, the writers of The Big Bang Theory fell into a really common trap with writing ace-coded characters in the media. So the show seems to treat Sheldon's mysterious, unnamed sexuality as a symptom of his mysterious, unnamed personality disorder. Asexual fans of pop culture, or just like people that care about diversity, are constantly having to claim characters as asexual because there are no canonically asexual characters in like television and movies, television especially, with like Todd from BoJack Horseman being the one lone asexual exception. And then they have to put up with the asexuality of their like spectral champions being treated as like a quirk of their weirdo, like robotic personality, or as a symptom of a personality disorder. In the pop culture detective video that I spoke about earlier, they talk about lampshading. So an example of that would be if you made a racist joke and then immediately called it racist so that you could get away with like the racists still laughing at the joke without taking accountability for the joke being racist.
Call McFlono McFlooney-Loo.
Calling Rajesh Koothrappali.
Oh, it's very impressive. And a little racist.
And if that's lampshading, then the Big Bang Theory's treatment of asexuality and ASD is like if you turned a light on in a room and then put like a little screen in front of it. So the room is still like fully lit and colored by this light, and everybody can see the light and everyone knows that it's there. And then the creators of the show just pretending that their audience is not made up of adults who know that there's a light there, and then just pretend that the light is coming from the window or some other naturally occurring source. And what do you call it when somebody tries to get somebody else to question their own logic and sanity in a situation?
Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which a person or a group covertly sows seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or group, making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment, often evoking in them cognitive dissonance and other changes, including low self-esteem.
People who watch the show believe that Sheldon is autistic, and the show's creators are like, no, you're imagining it. Asexuals, they watch the show, they're like, that there is an asexual, I know because I am one. And the show's creators are like, but are you really sure? Or are you just imagining it? Now, for the sake of a last-ditch Hail Mary attempt at concision, I'm just going to read the conclusion that I wrote for my, for the piece that I wrote for the Mary Sue. So I say, of course, Sheldon's behavior is open to interpretation, and the writers of The Big Bang Theory probably weren't harboring any malicious intent towards the asexual community or to autistic people. However, the creators of the show could definitely benefit from having a good hard think about what harm could possibly come from using this platform to positively educate people about an identity that was already manifest in one of their characters. Also, to stop laughing at it and start laughing with it and around it. It would probably have been more true to Sheldon's character to give him an honest, real identity and to respect that than to continue to write him into awkward, forced, and even reluctant intimacy with Amy. Such a big part of the reason why people are so fascinated by Sheldon's character is his attitude towards sex. So you have to wonder, if this part of his identity were demystified, would he be a character worth watching? If yes, then an asexual Sheldon would not hurt the show and would benefit the community. If no, then a character founded on nothing but misrepresenting a community is not a good character and certainly did not need its own spin-off show. By the way, I haven't seen Young Sheldon and you can't make me. The community of asexuals on paper is only 1% of the world's population, but we're in a time when recognizing and representing identities fairly is vital. Vital to people understanding and coming to terms with their own identities, and vital to those people feeling safe and understood in the world. And sadly, The Big Bang Theory and the spin-off show feels like a giant step away from a commitment from society to acknowledge asexuality as a valid identity. So, I'm very glad to have gotten all of that off my chest. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Give it a like if you did enjoy it. If you like me and want to see more from my channel, you can click the subscribe button down below, and I make new videos pretty much once a week or every 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I love you. Goodbye.